After 13 years, we finally have the long-awaited sequel to Avatar with Avatar: The Way of Water. Will James Cameron do it again, or has the intrigue for Pandora completely faded? Let's find out and review Avatar: The Way of Water. Jake Sully lives with his newfound family formed on the extrasolar moon Pandora. Once a familiar threat returns to finish what was previously started, Jake must work with Neytiri and the army of the Na'vi race to protect their home. Let's start with the big obvious for this film with James Cameron, the director and the direction for Avatar: The Way of Water. With this film, Cameron delivers an absolute visual spectacle. The film is practically useless if you were to watch this on a TV at home, and I mean that as a compliment to how crystal clear and how natural the film actually looks and sounds in the theaters. Now, because this franchise has been in the making for nearly 30 years, I do think there are some story elements that carry over from the first film, as well as just being seen outside of the Avatar franchise quite a few times now, that you can see where the story was going right away, and it just wasn't that compelling of a story overall. It was told in a very fascinating and engaging visual way, but I think had you not had that visual component, again, the story really wouldn't have been that much. Moving on to the cast and the characters. As for the cast and the characters, I do think everyone did a phenomenal job acting. I think everyone played their part the way they needed to. I do think there is an issue with the writing, however. Just some of the dialogue is really quite cringy at this point. You have certain characters calling people buttholes, only later on to going to use the F word, and it's like, well, where is this coming from? Like, you're not a potty mouth, and not like it just doesn't fit. And it's the same issue that I had with the first film, and I watched the first film right before seeing Avatar 2. It's the same issue. You've got Sigourney Weaver in the first film. She says something about butt heads, and then she goes on to say shit. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. But like I said, the cast does a phenomenal job with their acting, but I think there's just an issue with the writing and their characters that doesn't make all of them as a whole truly interesting. You've got this family element, you've got another family element with separate tribes, I guess you could say, and it's just, it doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work. It wasn't that engaging enough for me story-wise, and that was a big issue with a lot of people with the first film, because the first film really was just a pure visual spectacle with a very simple story, and that's okay. But 13 years later, I wanted something different. The film does set up things for these characters for future films, but again, it's all set up. There's no payoff within this film for me personally. I could see certain beats, plot points coming a mile away. I don't want to give out any spoilers, because if you want to see this film, this is a film that you should just go see in theaters. And it's a film that I don't care to necessarily talk about spoilers, because I do think if you watch movies consistently, when you start watching this film, you will absolutely see where the story is going within the first 30 minutes. That sounds like a long time, but you have to remember this film is 3 hours and 12 minutes long. Now, as for the story, the film, I will say, does have very similar beats to the first film, but it also remains vastly different because it is truly about loving and connecting with nature around you and your family and keeping those true family values. I think the story overall itself is entertaining, but it has no reason for being 3 hours and 10 minutes long. I actually think this film could have been done within about 2 hours of a runtime, and honestly, that's cutting out a lot of this film, but I think that's also a compliment, considering there are so many filmmakers out there who can't competently make an hour-and-a-half feature film, where even an hour and a half feels like, okay, this is taking its time, what's going on, and then nothing happens, and then there's no payoff. I do feel like you could have had a complete payoff within 2 hours for this film, and I think the only real excuse for having it be 3 hours or longer was to emphasize on the visuals that they were showing. But at certain points, I'm like, okay, I've seen this, let's move on. And that's a wild thing to say, because James Cameron was, adamant that, if you've seen anything in this film before, I'll give you 10, because he's saying that, like, this hasn't been done, nothing in this film has been seen the way that it has, and I get that. The water sequences are fantastic, and we'll get to that in the visuals. But again, it's just, Story-wise, I'm hammering that down. It's just, why do I care? It's 13 years later, and I should care about where this story is going, and I don't. If you're going to make a sequel to a film 13 years later, it needs to be something truly engaging, and I don't think this was truly engaging. Now, easily on to the best piece of this entire film. That is just the entire visual aspect of it. The cinematography, the angles, the color, the visual effects, everything. It just flows so well. Seeing these characters interact with water specifically is one of the most mind-blowing visual effects you will ever see in the theater. I saw this film in 3D, and I never ever say it, but this film was worth seeing in 3D. It was an absolute blast for your eyes. It was fun to watch many of these sequences, but like I said, it just needed to be cut down. Certain elements needed to be cut out. Dialogue needed to be cut out that just wasn't relevant or just was redundant. The film absolutely outdoes the original with its fully immersive world and crystal clear imagery. The world of Pandora looks absolutely stunning, and there is truly nothing that you can take away from that. This world is believable, and it looks phenomenal. You could just hammer that home throughout the rest of the video. The visuals are phenomenal, the story not so much. Moving on to the score, I think the film did a good job with both the diegetic sounds and the non-diegetic sounds. All of these sounds of the creatures and the way the world works, the waves, the leaves rustling, the fabric being put onto people or the Na'vi, all of it. The sounds just work phenomenally. I do think that the actual score of the non-diegetic sound, the music for the film was good, but it's not something that I will necessarily remember. The only one that I really remembered is the final closing theme, because I will say right now it is very similar, if not the exact same, from the ending of Avatar 2009. And that's also another complaint I had with the story, is that the films end almost the exact same way, and I don't mean that in a way that gives out spoilers, so I'm sorry if that disappoints people, but visually it ends in almost the exact same way, and it just kind of felt like a weird cop-out that I was not into. Moving on to the final thoughts for Avatar: The Way of Water. Avatar 2 is a very fun visual theater experience, and honestly nothing more. It's entertaining, and it's got some cool family elements, but just family elements that didn't end up clicking with me, which is an entire shock to myself. Avatar: The Way of Water is a fun theater experience and nothing more for me personally. It visually is stunning, it has a story with a lot of heart, but at the end of the day, I just don't feel like it clicked with me on a way that I was expecting it. You know, it's about family. I have a relatively large family. I don't know. This is a film that I should have liked. I should have connected with it more, but I just think it's due to the story's writing issues. And I don't think this is me being stubborn 13 years later. I think this is an issue that a lot of people are going to have with the film. And at this point, I have no interest in seeing this franchise go on to be 5 films long. I do think that you could end this franchise at the 3rd film. I know James Cameron has the 3rd almost 90% done, and they're already starting on the 4th. So, like, there's part of me that's like, yeah, let him make his 5 movies and then be done with filmmaking forever, as, kind of a cool book-ending note. But me personally, I wish Cameron would have done something else that was original. One more original idea that he could have done instead of Avatar 2 or Avatar 3. I don't think I will ever rewatch Avatar: The Way of Water, or the original for that matter. I don't think I will rewatch either of those films ever again, probably in my lifetime. I don't think these are films that I would go on to show my kids, just because they're kind of boring. Visually, they're freaking top notch, but yeah, story-wise, they're kind of boring. And one of the main reasons that I'm purely curious for Avatar 4 and Avatar 5 is because the fact that Cameron said that we would end up seeing Earth, or this version of Earth, in the Avatar universe. And that does sound intriguing to me, but I don't need to wait through 2 other films that are probably 3 to 4 hours long in order to get there. And I know that Avatar 3 is rumored to have a 9-hour cut. I do not want to sit through a 9-hour film. The longest film I will sit through, period, is 4 hours in the theater. If it's longer than 4 hours, it either needs to be split up with an intermission, or it needs to be just played at home on your streaming service. It's just 9 hours is too long, and I don't want to see it. Overall, we waited 13 years for Avatar 2, and it was not worth the wait. It's crazy to think that James Cameron has only been working on the Avatar franchise in my entire lifetime, and I would argue that only one of those films was truly a global visual spectacle, and that would have been the first one just because of how revolutionary it was at the time. Whereas now, the graphics are fantastic, and they are still very, very stunning and revolutionary. They look awesome, better than ever. But again, it's 13 years later. You got to come up with something story-wise to make it interesting. I did not find it interesting, and that really sucks to say. I was not looking forward to the film really from its get-go. I had no interest in seeing it, but everybody started talking about it, saying that, it's a blast, Cameron's back, all that stuff, and I have to disagree. It was not for me. With that being said, I don't think I would rewatch this film. I don't think I would watch it if somebody else asked, just because of this damn long runtime. And it is most definitely a film that I will not be purchasing. I do not own the first Avatar. This is more concrete evidence that I don't need to purchase the first Avatar. Don't need to purchase this one. They're not for me. I loved seeing Avatar 2009 in theaters. I still remember that theater experience because it was awesome. Moving forward, as time has gone on, I don't need to see the original again. I don't need to see Avatar 2 again. I know it kind of sounds like a bummer of a review, but yeah, this is just one of those films that was a big miss for me. But let me know what you guys thought of Avatar: The Way of Water down in the comments below. Will you guys be looking forward to Avatar 3, 4, and 5? Also, let me know that down in the comments below. Yeah, this was just a big miss, but I'm Carter, and I'll see you guys in my next movie review. Peace.